Winter came early that year. Not the kind that announces itself with drama, just a quiet tightening of the world. The birds left first, then the insects, then the sounds. The strangers stayed. At first, they tried to live as if the cold were temporary. They built their houses too close to the shore, where the wind sharpens itself. They cut trees the wrong way, wasting strength. They burned wood meant for spring. They argued with the land. The land did not answer. I watched them from a distance, as I had been taught. Not out of cruelty, out of memory. Because we already knew what winter does to those who arrive late. Soon they began to come to us. Not as guests, as learners. They pointed at their mouths, at the forest, at us. Hunger makes all languages simple. We showed them which trees bleed sweetness when cut, which roots keep their strength under snow, how to follow the quiet paths of animals who know better than men. Some of them listened, some of them smiled and nodded, and did as they pleased anyway. There was a man among them who tried very hard to be kind. He brought small gifts, dull metal, colored cloth, beads that meant nothing here. He spoke often of his people and his God and his great journey. One evening, as the fire snapped and settled, he asked me a question through signs and broken words. "Why do you help us?" I didn't answer at first, because the truth is never the first thing people want. Finally, I said, "Because starving people do not stay small for long." He frowned, unsure whether this was a kindness. The sickness began when the cold grew deep. It always does. First, a child who wouldn't wake. Then a woman whose breath rattled like loose stones. Then the smell, sharp and sweet and unmistakable. They did not understand sickness the way we did. They fought it, they prayed at it. They gathered close to one another, as if warmth could push death away. It couldn't. Each morning, fewer of them stood outside their houses. Each night, more lights went dark. One day, the woman with the bundle, the one I had noticed on the beach, came to us alone. The bundle was gone. Her face looked older now, carved by something deeper than cold. She held out her hands, palms up. Not begging, empty. I gave her broth, made from what little we had saved. She drank without speaking. When she finished, she pressed her forehead briefly to mine. It was not our way, but grief invents its own customs. After that, they depended on us more openly. They followed when we moved inland. They copied our shelters, our fires, our tools. They learned quickly, and they learned selectively. They learned how to survive. They did not learn how to belong. I noticed how their eyes changed as the weeks passed. Less fear, more counting. They began to mark places in the dirt, to gesture not just at food, but at space. One man walked the edge of our fields and spoke loudly, as if the land itself were deaf. I told my grandson to stay close. He asked me, "Will they leave when the cold leaves?" I looked at the smoke rising from their houses, at the graves behind them, at the way they had already begun to rebuild. "No," I said. They didn't cross the water to leave. Spring came slowly, as if it were thinking things over. The ice cracked, the rivers remembered how to move, and the strangers survived. They survived because the land allowed it, because we allowed it. That is the part they will remember. What they will forget is how close they came to disappearing. What they will never understand is how survival can look like kindness, until it doesn't. When the first green pushed through the soil, the strangers smiled again. They talked about beginnings. I watched them and felt the same weight in my bones as before. Because now that they had learned how to live here, the next lesson would be something else entirely. Because we were about to learn what these people really meant when they said the word survive.